The forest surrounding the town of Pine Hollow was known for its haunting beauty: thick canopies, ancient trees, and mist that seemed to linger no matter the season. But beyond the beauty lay dark secrets, carefully buried. Locals avoided a particular stretch deep in the woods, known ominously as the Silent Grove, where several hikers and campers had gone missing over the years. Rumors spread of a killer lurking among the trees, but no evidence was ever found. Until now. Leo Marsh, a private investigator, had vanished while following a cold trail of unsolved murders that stretched back decades. His last known location, the Silent Grove. His sister, Claire Marsh, wasn't one to sit quietly. With the police abandoning the search after months without leads, she took matters into her own hands and entered the forest to find her brother, or at least uncover the truth. Claire armed herself with her brother's notes, following his path step by step. The deeper she went, the quieter the forest became. No birds sang, no insects buzzed, just the unsettling crunch of her boots against the leaves. Halfway through her journey, she stumbled upon something odd: a knife embedded in a tree trunk, dried blood staining the hilt. Attached to the handle was a faded scrap of paper written in Leo's messy scrawl: "Do not follow me. He's watching." Claire's heart pounded, but she pressed on. She knew her brother would never leave a case unfinished, even if it cost him his life. She continued until nightfall and set up camp by a shallow stream. As darkness fell, the forest seemed to shift, the trees whispering with the wind, or perhaps something more sinister. The next morning, Claire found the first solid trace of her brother, his broken flashlight near a clearing. And there, at the edge of the grove, stood a dilapidated hunting cabin. The door hung off its hinges, and the windows were blackened with dirt. Claire hesitated only for a moment before stepping inside. The cabin was cluttered with old hunting tools, but the floor was covered in muddy footprints, too many to belong to one person. And in the center of the room, she found a journal belonging to Leo, open to the last entry: "I was wrong. This wasn't random. Someone is keeping score." Before Claire could read further, she heard a soft creak from the back room. Holding her breath, she slowly pushed the door open. Inside was a tangle of ropes, bloodied clothes, and bones. But the most chilling discovery was a row of Polaroid photos pinned to the wall, each labeled with a name and date. Some were hikers, others locals. But the last one was Leo Marsh. Suddenly, Claire heard footsteps outside. Someone, or something, was coming. Panicking, she shoved the journal into her backpack and darted out the back door just as a shadowy figure emerged from the trees. Claire didn't get a clear look, but the glint of a hunting knife in the figure's hand was unmistakable. She ran through the forest, the sound of snapping twigs and crunching leaves following close behind. It was as if the forest itself was working against her, branches snagging at her clothes and roots rising to trip her. In her panic, Claire stumbled into a shallow pit filled with skeletal remains. Among them was Leo's watch, still ticking. With adrenaline surging, Claire scrambled out of the pit and sprinted toward the forest's edge. But just as she reached a clearing, the figure tackled her to the ground. She fought back, slamming her elbow into her pursuer's face, catching a glimpse of cold, lifeless eyes. It was a man, but his expression was blank, almost robotic, as if possessed by something ancient. Desperation gave Claire strength, and she wrestled the knife from his grip, plunging it into his side. The man gasped, but did not scream. Instead, he smiled, a slow, unsettling grin, and whispered, "It's not over. He'll come for you too." Claire didn't wait to find out what he meant. She bolted through the woods, ignoring the burning in her lungs and the blood on her hands. The trees seemed to whisper as she passed, "You shouldn't have come." But finally, after what felt like hours, she saw the lights of the town flickering through the trees. She burst out of the forest, collapsing onto the road, gasping for air. Locals rushed to help, but Claire could only manage a few words. The killer, he's still out there. Weeks later, Claire handed Leo's journal to the police, but they found no trace of the cabin or the man she fought in the woods. Officially, the case remains unsolved. Locals still avoid the silent grove, but every now and then, a hiker will go missing, and the whispers return. Reminders that the forest has its own way of keeping secrets. And somewhere, deep beneath the towering pines, someone keeps adding names to the list. Days passed, but Claire couldn't shake the feeling that something had followed her out of the forest. The man's chilling final words echoed in her mind. He'll come for you too. Nightmares haunted her sleep, visions of dark woods, Leo calling her name, and the sound of dry leaves crunching under unseen footsteps. She knew the police wouldn't help. If she wanted answers, she had to go back. One evening, as Claire was preparing to leave Pine Hollow for good, a knock sounded at her door. She opened it to find an elderly man with deep-set eyes and a hunched posture. He introduced himself as Harris, a retired ranger who once patrolled the very forest where Leo had disappeared. "I know what's in that forest," Harris whispered, "but it's not just a killer. Something older lives there." He slid an old, crumpled map into Claire's hand, with a section of the silent grove circled in red. "If you want to stop it, you need to go here, but be warned, you won't leave the same." Harris vanished into the night, leaving Claire with more questions than answers. But she knew she had no choice. Whatever was lurking in the forest wouldn't let her go so easily. Claire packed a hunting knife, flashlight, water, and an old map folded tightly in her jacket pocket. She knew this journey was going to be dangerous, but there was no turning back. The silent grove was darker than she remembered, as if the trees sensed her return. Fog curled along the forest floor, and the canopy above twisted unnaturally, blotting out even the faintest light. Every step she took seemed heavier, as if the ground itself resisted her presence. The old map led her down narrow, overgrown paths, guiding her deeper into the heart of the grove, a place few dared to tread. Soon, strange carvings began to appear on the bark of trees. These weren't ordinary symbols. They pulsed faintly, as if alive, and hummed with a low vibration Claire could feel in her chest. She ran her fingers over one of the carvings, and a chill crept down her spine. Whatever ritual these symbols were part of, it was still active. Not long after, Claire stumbled upon the remnants of an abandoned campsite. Torn tents lay scattered among the underbrush, along with shoes, backpacks, and other personal items left to rot. Amid the debris, she noticed a photograph wedged beneath an old camping stove. She pulled it free and froze. Leo's face stared back at her, smiling alongside a group of strangers she didn't recognize. There was also a crumpled note, scrawled in shaky handwriting. "The woods feed on fear." Her heart pounded. The message was a warning, one too late for those who had left it behind. Claire knew now that the forest had no intention of letting her leave. Just as the sun began to dip below the horizon, she heard a voice drift through the trees, a low, desperate whisper carried on the breeze. "Claire, I'm here. Help me." It was Leo's voice. Her pulse quickened. Was it really him? Or just another trick of the forest? Against her instincts, she pressed deeper into the grove, following the voice into the thick mist that cloaked the trees. Each step felt like a leap into the unknown as the forest grew colder and the shadows longer. The wind whispered her name, soft, insistent, like a lullaby pulling her toward danger. At last, she reached a clearing dominated by a massive tree. Its roots knotted and twisted like the coils of a giant serpent. There, at the base of the tree, she found Leo tied to the roots, his face pale and gaunt, his eyes sunken with exhaustion. "Claire," he croaked, his voice weak. "You shouldn't have come. He knows you're here." Before Claire could free Leo, the ground trembled beneath her feet, and from the shadows emerged a figure, a man with hollow eyes and gaunt features. It was the same hunter who had attacked her before, but his movements were even more unnatural, as if something else had taken control of him. "The forest is hungry," the hunter rasped, his voice no longer entirely human. "It demands a sacrifice. Tonight, it will have both of you." Claire realized too late. The strange carvings marked the boundaries of an ancient ritual. She had walked straight into a trap, and now the forest was awake, hungry for their souls. Leo had been the bait, and she the final offering. Panic surged through Claire, but she forced herself to stay calm. She slashed at the roots binding Leo, cutting him free. He collapsed into her arms, too weak to walk on his own. "Come on, Leo," she whispered, pulling him to his feet. "We're getting out of here." With Leo leaning on her, they stumbled through the forest, every step a struggle against the trees that seemed to move on their own. Branches reached out like skeletal hands, tearing at their clothes and skin. Behind them, the hunter gave chase, his laughter echoing through the night like a death knell. The forest came alive with whispers, chanting in an ancient tongue, "Stay, stay, stay." The mist thickened, obscuring their path. Claire's legs burned from exhaustion, but she pushed on, knowing that if they stopped, the forest would consume them both. Just as they reached the grove's edge, the hunter lunged, grabbing Claire's ankle with a bony hand. She fell to the ground with a scream, her knife clattering out of reach. The hunter's grin stretched unnaturally wide. "You can't leave," he whispered, "not without paying the price." But Claire refused to give up. With a surge of adrenaline, she kicked the hunter square in the chest, forcing him to release her. She scrambled for the knife, her fingers closing around the hilt, and without hesitation, she drove the blade into his heart. The hunter collapsed with a guttural groan, but as he lay dying, he whispered one final warning. "It's not over. It never ends." Claire and Leo burst out of the forest, gasping for breath as they stumbled onto solid ground. The hunter's body was gone, swallowed by the grove, leaving no trace behind. The silent grove stood as silent and ominous as ever, its secrets buried beneath layers of darkness. For weeks, Leo remained withdrawn, haunted by nightmares he refused to explain. Claire couldn't shake the feeling that the forest was still watching, waiting for the right moment to call them back. One morning, Claire found a small folded note left on her doorstep. In the same shaky handwriting from the abandoned campsite, it read, "The woods remember. They always do." And deep within the shadows of the silent grove, the forest waited, hungry for its next prey.
Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button for more videos. Until next time.